The moral of the story is this: unnecessary dead zones are not a good thing. Anti-hooking is an unnecessary dead zone. Therefore, anti-hooking is not a good thing. It creates more problems than it solves. And even if you spend the time solving each of those problems individually, that's all just bandages. The best solution for this is adding a toggle so that we can disable anti-hooking. Hey everyone, Menanth here. To understand what anti-hooking is, we must first understand what hooking itself is. Hooking is when you're swiping along the trackpad, and as you reach the inner edge, your thumb flattens out, and that causes the cursor to do a little hook backwards and down. Let me demonstrate that right now. This is with Steam closed. You can kind of see it kind of goes down and a little bit backwards sometimes, and that was a good hook there. So that's what hooking is. What anti-hooking is it is a dead zone that is applied in Steam to this inner edge here. Steam is not open. You can see that the inner edge is currently active, as are all the other edges. But when you have Steam open, it applies a dead zone to this inner edge of the trackpad. And what that does, when you are swiping and your thumb starts entering that dead zone, your movement gets killed before your thumb flattens. And as a result, that hook no longer exists because, well, that dead zone basically clamps it out, more or less. It is worth noting that anti-hooking is only applicable in some Steam input modes. Again, Lizard mode right now is active, so you're not going to see it. But it's only active in as mouse and likely as joystick as well. I haven't personally tested it. I don't use as joystick, so I'm not worried about it. But if you notice it there, then that's probably to be expected. But anti-hooking typically only applies to as mouse. So you've seen it with Lizard mode, and Lizard mode demonstrates that it is not a firmware issue. It is in Steam input. And to double check that, I'm going to open up a program real quick. And this is going to kill Lizard mode, but because Steam is not open, it's not going to, the controller's not going to do anything, but the program is going to read the trackpad values. These are the values coming straight off the controller. As you can see, it hits every single edge just fine without Steam open. So we know that the controller is sending the full range of the trackpads. Let's get Steam open and show you how it responds with Steam open. So now with Steam open, and I have my desktop config loaded, you can see that we're still working with mouse, and now the trackpad tester works with it as well. And I can swipe, and as you can see, as I get to the edge and flatten my thumb, the trackpad goes dead on the edge, which prevents most of the hook. There's still a little bit of hooking when my thumb goes down, but it's not nearly as bad. But you can see that even though my thumb is on the edge of the trackpad, the mouse is not moving. And when I get to these edges, it does. This is going to be important here in a moment, but as I'm swiping along the edge, you can see that it all works except for the inner edge. The inner edge has that dead zone applied to it for anti-hooking purposes. One thing you'll notice, a little bit of jank. This is why I do not like anti-hooking. I think it is a bad feature. It causes problems. The first problem is inconsistent trackball behavior. So what do I mean by this? Because this edge here, the outer edge, is live, when you swipe out, trackball doesn't enable. Trackball does not spin. That is because your thumb is on the trackpad. It's still registering as being on the trackpad. This is intended behavior. This is good behavior. If your thumb is on the trackpad, the virtual ball should not spin at all. This is correct behavior. But now let's swipe into the dead zone, into the anti-hooking feature. You can see trackball activates and spins. So on the live edge, you have correct behavior. And on the dead edge, you have incorrect behavior when it comes to trackball emulation. That's problem number one that the anti-hooking dead zone causes. Problem number two relates to this feature here, the edge spin speed and edge spin radius. I'm going to turn trackball mode off for this. What edge spin speed does, or what edge spin does in general, when you are swiping in the middle it acts as a mouse like normal, but when you swipe into an edge, it'll carry a little bit of momentum forward and continue moving the cursor. Because this edge is dead and this edge is live, kind of like with trackball mode, you have an inconsistent response. So I'm going to back out of the configuration now and we're going to test that. Bring this back up. So you can see it moves a little bit slow. And over here, it moves a lot faster for whatever reason on the dead edge than on the live edge. It's inconsistent edge spin behavior. And it doesn't matter how fast I swipe into the edge. For whatever reason, the dead edge produces a faster edge spin than the live edge does. The third issue that the dead zone causes, I will play a clip from a video game here shortly to explain it. It is a hypothetical issue that relates to trackpad sensitivity across the pad. With the as mouse, as it is currently, it's just a generic sensitivity slider. But as we know with the gyro settings, it got updated to use natural angles. So you put in a dots per 360 for the game, and then you change your sensitivity such that at a sensitivity of 1, if you rotate the controller 1 degree, then the in-game camera rotates 1 degree. It's natural sensitivity, natural angles, real-world sensitivity, whatever you want to call it. When that change happened, the idea got floated that in the future, the trackpad might undergo an overhaul to bring it in line with that setting, because with Steam Controller 1, and I'll touch on that in a minute, with Steam Controller 1, a lot of users set up their trackpad and mouse sensitivity to be a degrees per swipe. So, swiping across the whole thing would equal like 180 degrees of rotation in game. That's how a lot of people set it up. Under that system where you have the dots per 360 and then in degrees per swipe sensitivity, and I'm going to play a clip for this here in a moment. If you set it up to do 180 degrees, if you tell it to do that, because of that dead zone basically clips off that range. So when you swipe, you only swipe maybe 160 degrees. I'm going to play that clip now. Okay, so I want to document this bug real quick. It's not really a bug. It's actually kind of intended behavior, which is hilarious, but it's wrong. Anyway, this is Deadlock. I'm playing it finally just to get a configuration set up. And I love how it has the new beta trackpad to angles thing, which is great. I would love that rework for actual trackpad as mouse or trackpad to mouse in the future. Anyway, camera turn peripheral swipe, 360 degrees. That's what I love. It's crazy to see that the slider can go way further than that, but hey, 360 degrees, perfect. That's what I like. I have the vertical sensitivity turned all the way down at the moment so that it only moves on the horizontal. So let's get in game real quick and let me use a different mouse to aim at the center of that triangle. Now I'm going to make a swipe on the trackpad, and you can see it doesn't quite make it 360 degrees. So with all of those problems laid out with how anti-hooking causes issues, the question then becomes, is anti-hooking actually a good thing? Again, it only happens when you're flattening your thumb as you swipe. But here's the thing. Here's the big thing. Steam Controller 1 veterans know that the best way to use the trackpads is with the tips of your thumbs. No flattening your thumb at all. You just use the tips. That's why this palm swell exists on Steam Controller 1. It kicks your thumb off of the controller and allows it to arc back down naturally so that you wind up interacting with the trackpads with just the tips of your thumb. It's a very clever design. Many people didn't like it, but it served an incredibly good purpose. So let's demonstrate that on Steam Controller 2 real quick. Let me go ahead and re-exit Steam. So again, let's demonstrate the hook if you flatten your thumb. But now let's go with the idea that you keep your thumb straight, so you're interacting with it only with the tip of your thumb. Do you see any hooking here at all? Any hooking? So no, you don't. So anti-hooking is solving a problem that could be solved just by learning how to use the trackpads better as a default. And then it causes those other 3 issues that I explained. This is where things get a little bit tricky, and the reason why I wanted to make this video, it's not a happy reason why I wanted to make this video. This anti-hooking feature has existed for years. Let me bring up that video real quick. I made a video on it 7 years ago because it impacted Steam Controller 1 as well. Only this edge here, right here, only the excuse that they made back then, the reasoning that they used, was to prevent activating the trackpad when you're using ABXY. It was basically an anti-fat finger situation. And when you go to the Steam support page for Steam Controller 2015 and you scroll down, that intended behavior is still listed. Now, when they made the deck, they kind of kept with that for a little bit because the deck still had that dead edge. They just replaced ABXY with the touchscreen. So, if you're reaching across the trackpad to interact with the touchscreen, they're worried about fat fingering there. And now, of course, 7 years later, of course, this problem has existed long before I made the video even, but I just made that video 7 years ago. Of course, Steam Controller 2, it inherits the same flaw that Steam Deck has. Technically, Steam Controller 1 had it too. And again, the official response now is anti-hooking. Sometime during the deck, they changed from the fat finger excuse to the hooking excuse. And it's kind of been irritating because you look at the Steam forums, you look at the subreddit, people are constantly bringing up, hey, there's a dead zone on my controller that I don't like. They're constantly bringing it up. It's not like everyone's outraged about it, but it's a very steady trickle. You see posts like that all the time cropping up. So I have been fighting to try and get a setting, and let me bring up where I would want the setting to be. Let me bring it up. I have been fighting for years to get a setting somewhere in here that would just toggle anti-hooking or toggle that dead zone and let us use the full range of the trackpads. I've been fighting for years for this. There was an undocumented change. We'll get to what that undocumented change was a little bit later, but what it did is it basically killed all of the other zones. Now, I'm on the Steam beta branch where it's been fixed, thankfully, as of last night, as of the time of this video, as of last night. But all of the edges were dead for every single mode. Scroll wheel, joystick, radial menu, D-pad, even the on-screen keyboard. The edges were dead. It was horrible. I don't know why they wanted to do it. If you look at the patch notes, it mentions something about momentum tracking, which is why I think they were trying to fix the inconsistent behavior. However, I don't know how or why, but the problem is because of the dead zone. And the dead zone is what's creating the bad behavior. I do not want the bad behavior from the inner edge with that dead zone going to the other one. Even in as mouse mode, I do not want it. I just want the ability to remove that dead zone, get the full range back. That would solve the trackball inconsistency issue. It would solve the edge spin issue. It would solve the future sensitivity issue without needing to implement solutions for each one of those problems individually. Just give us full range control, get rid of the dead zone. Of course, you probably don't want to get rid of it. I understand why anti-hooking exists. That's why I am suggesting a setting. Have it in here. Have it default to on. Let anti-hooking still exist, but for people who actually understand how to use the trackpads and who want greater control and who find all the other issues annoying, give us a toggle, please.